Wise Wednesdays started on April 1st with a humble episode on forgiveness. Between then and now, we've had heart-led conversations on happiness, stress management, relationships, resilience, public speaking, respecting boundaries, self-discovery, mindset, just being, listening, reclaiming your life, intuition, and even food. I would like to thank all my listeners and the guests who gave me their time and trust. It is because of you that we kept going. It is because of you that we kept growing. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you so, so much.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you so, so much. We are today on episode 91 of Wise Wednesdays with RK. My speaker for today, my star speaker for today is Prajesh. I recently met him on a platform called Grit Coaches, and he is the founder of Phambili Coaching. He is a trained mindset coach and a master practitioner of NLP, and he has been working with youth for the last 16 years. Somebody with whom I felt a connect, somebody who I felt was speaking from intention of service, because he's definitely making a massive difference, not just as a coach but even as a podcast host, where he chats to make a difference, and the conversations are fabulous. You really should check it out. It's called Baskets of Knowledge. So without further ado, I bring to you Prajesh.
Kia ora koutou, everybody. Ko Matopus te Maunga, ko Zambezi te Awa, ko Zimbabwe Aho, ko Chhanabhai Tokawhano, ko Prajesh Takingawa. Good morning, everybody. That is just a traditional Maori greeting, or pepeha. It is me acknowledging where I'm living at the moment, which is in New Zealand, and it's acknowledging the ancestors of the land, who are the Maori people. So what did I say there? My name is Prajesh, and I spoke about my mountain, which is Matopus, which is in Africa, my river, which is Zambezi, where I'm from, which is Zimbabwe, and my family name. And that's how I introduce myself. Thank you so much for having me this morning, and thank you to everyone that's listening in.
Thank you so much, Prajesh. It is beautiful to have you on board. And today we are talking about Young, Mind, and Free.
Yeah, that's totally. So like you said in your introduction, I've been working with youth for the last 16 years, and I think young people are just fascinating. And as much as people say that I've helped them, I think they've helped me a lot. As every single person that I've met falls into two categories. They're either aspirational or inspirational, and as we work with them, they overlap, and then you find just that sweet spot that gets them into where they want to go and how they want to get there. So, and it's also been interesting for me because that's how I've built my my podcast and also my coaching protocol based on the learnings I've had over the last 16 or so years.
Beautiful. And I like what you say about it's that they say that you've helped them, but actually they've helped you. Isn't that so true?
Yeah, and I think that's true. And I think anyone that's worked in education or coaching or anything where they've helped, where they've been a service, people say, "Oh, thank you for helping us," but actually, with each interaction, I think you learn something about yourself and about the world. And I think that's something that I try and take every single day and every single person that I meet with. But what have I learned about myself, or what has challenged me? Because we all have challenges in our minds and or boundaries or preconceptions, and people just engage in them. And young people are not afraid to challenge that. There's no boundaries. They will just challenge that, and you go, "Oh, did you just say that?" Yeah.
So I think that's where the whole topic comes from: young, mind, and free.
Yeah, definitely. So the reason why we picked the topic is because young people, especially in the world at the moment, are very what's the word? They are very aware, self-aware, but also they're also not aware. There's a bit of a boundary, but they're aware because they're not afraid to speak their mind. And when they speak their mind, they either come from two places where there's this fear or confidence. And this is where the conversation becomes very interesting when you try and meld the two. Are you coming from a place of fear or a space of confidence? And sometimes one shields the other. You could be really afraid and using confidence to hide that, or sometimes you're fearful because you just want to be confident of what your actions are.
So when and how did you, I know you've been in education for a long, long time, but how and when did you realize that this was the sector that you wanted to work with?
Yeah, it's really interesting because I'm actually a trained computer scientist, which is interesting, right? So I did my training in computer science, and that was in South Africa, and then I moved over to New Zealand to do my masters and etc. in the same field. And it was while I was in New Zealand that I got to work with young people, and it was just incidental because I came over as an international student. You don't have a lot of money, so you take on jobs that make life much easier for you to work and much cheaper. And that's what happened to me. And I started working and engaging with young people in a role that was not linked to my study at all. And that's when I got introduced to young people from then. And I started to teach as well at the university, and that was a whole different ball game. So in one role, I was living with young people in terms of looking after them when they transition to university. So I'm with them 24/7 essentially. So you see everything, the highs, the lows. And then in the other context, I'm in a classroom with them, teaching them in an academic sense. And that's when I just started getting into this whole different framework of, wow, this is interesting. And then I was given a job opportunity to work in the secondary school sector, where young people are transitioning out of school and what's next for them. And that's where I've just gone, wow, this is just a whole different ball game. And that then also inspired me to build my coaching business around the learnings that I have learned over time.
So as we speak of your coaching business, what
Yeah.
does the title of your coaching business mean?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it's Phambili Coaching, and it's really quite funny because it's a throwback to my youth. When I was growing up, I remember I was going to a traditional government school, and one day there was a brand new school that opened up, and nobody had heard anything about it. And my mom was like, one of my mom's friends, like, "Oh, you need to send your sons over there." Blah blah blah. So within 2 days after setting ourselves up in a school that we knew, we went to this new school, which is called Masia Phambili, which basically means let's go forward. And when I was thinking of my company name, I was like, what better way to think about moving forward with mindset than Phambili Coaching? So Phambili means let's go forward. And ironically, Phambili Coaching and PC stands for my name and surname. So I thought it went really well.
Very smartly done.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's my inspiration behind the name. And I think with every, and as a coach as well, you know that with every client that you meet, you want to grow forward with them. You want it's all about forward thinking, not about backward thinking, which is where I think, as you've spoken about before in your podcast, about the difference between coaches and therapists. Lots of people seem to confuse the two. We're definitely not therapists, so we're forward focused. Yeah.
True. So you have the coaching, the background with you, and you're working a lot with the youth. So what happens is sometimes we as adults think that the youth do not want to speak to us,
Yeah.
or they have a mindset of their own, or we could have certain things that we might think about them, and they might as well.
Yeah.
So how do
Totally.
you then bridge that gap? How do
Yeah, I
you?
think yeah,
Yeah.
that's a great question. I think I sit in a very interesting space because I'm not a parent of these young people, and neither am I the child of the young of the family, right? So when young people come and speak to me, the first thing that we have to I try and do is build rapport with them and go, hey, whatever you tell me, there's no judgment here.
Yeah.
There's no fear of repercussions. Whatever you tell me, it is what it is. And then I have to convey that to family members. So sometimes there's a bit of a clash between what a young person wants and what a family wants with expectations. And navigating that fine line is really interesting. But at the end of the day, it's all about what's best for the young person. But also, to flip it around, sometimes sometimes I have to let the young person see, actually, your parents and your family are actually on the right pathway here when they're trying to say this to you, because there's a reason behind the way they're doing this. So it's a double navigation between both the young person and the family, which can be interesting. And also, as you can imagine, there's lots of other dynamics that come into play. There's cultural dynamics and where you've been brought up, economic dynamics, all that comes into play as you're working with families and young people.
Absolutely. I do remember being on this coaching program. We used to have this a 4-day camp
Yeah.
for youth as well as for teens as well as children. And on both occasions, I was selected to speak and be part of I lead the older children, the higher. Actually, they were all taller than me, but I think anybody would be taller than a
Yeah.
5 foot me. But anyway, and it was fun. I mean, to actually go on and walk in, fist bump, high five, jump, remember their names, challenge them, sometimes even put them in a corner and ask them questions that they would probably not expect from me, so that they have that realization, right? And then
Yeah.
always assuring them that I'm on your side, I'm your buddy. So
Totally.
when somebody asks me what has been one of my most happiest moments, hands down, it will be on the second camp when I was receiving my certification on stage for my contribution at the program. It was my team that stood up and gave me a standing
Oh,
ovation.
fantastic. Yeah. And
I mean, if anybody tells me to anchor back to one of your proudest moments of life,
yeah.
I think that would be one of them. So it's just important. I think communication makes a big difference.
It does, and I like to go back to what you said before. Young people are just you just have no idea the impact that you have on with a young person, and I think you see this in schools and in teaching programs that when young people finish up a certain age group or a year group, they give gifts to the teachers. As the teachers don't ask for them, they're like, "Hey, we're doing our job," but the amount of adoration that some teachers get, not all teachers, but some teachers get,
Yeah.
is just amazing. And then I think that's the impact. And you go back to you as an educator, you go, actually, this is not what I did. I did it because I want to
Yeah.
do this and I want to help you go forward. And it's just it's that whole, hey, we're just here for you, and they take it all, which is amazing.
It is. It definitely is. I think it's all about going in with an open mind and no judgment.
Yeah, and I
And
think that's really. And I was going to ask you a question. I was going to ask you the question.
yes,
When you
please.
were in that camp there, did you feel uninhibited, like you're not an adult anymore because you're among young people, you could just be silly and there's no problems at all? Versus if you try to do the same thing in an adult situation, how would that have? That was totally different.
But you know what? I'm always silly.
Oh, and you're
You
like, wait a
should
minute,
have
this is
known
silly. Yeah,
that by now.
I do know that exactly. Yeah, but sometimes when you're around adults, well, not
I
you,
get, I
but
get,
people around
I get
adults,
where you're
yes,
coming from.
yeah,
But yes, when I was with them, I did feel very much in my own skin. I did not feel the need to prove myself to anybody. And once I put my guards down, what I realized was they also felt the need. It wasn't all about scoring or doing anything. It's just about being yourself and accepting yourself as who you are. Goof
yeah, and
ups
that's, and that
and
just sets you young, mind, and free, right? You become young, mind, and free, right there.
yes,
Yeah.
exactly,
It's
exactly.
quite an amazing feeling, isn't it, when that happens?
It is. It is. It is. It is.
Yeah,
I've had the opportunity to interview one of my favorite actors, and he was at the time 62, 63 years old, and I was 42 something. It was
yeah,
just 2 or 3 days after my birthday, and I got to interview him, and I was all fangirling him, and I just asked him about, and I said, "Isn't this beautiful birthday gift?" And he says, "Age is just a number."
yeah,
Yes, it is. So it's not about how old you are to feel young. I think it's about
totally.
how you think uh, that changes the conversations.
Totally, and just about always, I think I always work with the philosophy that to have a beginner's mindset, no matter what, and if you have the childlike mindset in every setting, doesn't actually matter. You're always going to be learning, and you're always just going to be like, oh, okay, cool, just bring it on. But obviously, you have to switch between the two when you have to be a bit
You
assertive,
do.
but to be aware of that's okay to have the childlike mindset. It's just I think it's life changing. It is
So,
life
Pratish,
changing.
what comes to your mind when I say it's easier to be an adult than to keep the inner child alive?
Easier to be an adult than to. I think yeah, that is an interesting question. I think it depends on the framework. I actually think it's the other way around. For me, I love being the inner child. I think the inner child is all good, but I think it's easier to be an adult because you can conform to certain norms. or you can live in these norms that the world has set up for you. When you're a young person, yeah, there are some norms, but the norms and the boundaries can be stretched out. And also, as we know, when you're young, your brain doesn't develop until you're 25 years old. So you're just pushing all these boundaries. You're doing some pretty cool, interesting things. Then when you become an adult, things change a little bit, because not just because of the world, but also physiologically, your brain has now become more aware and more conscious of what you're trying to do, and bit more risk averse. So I think when you're an adult, you are looking at the rules and you're worried about the implications. There are a lot of implications. If I do this, who is it going to affect? Is it going to affect my family, my job, my relationship? Whereas a young person, I think you do have that awareness, but it's not front of mind. It is somewhere there, but it's all about living in the moment for most young people, I think.
Correct. And when we look at adulting, is it overrated?
Yeah, what a great phrase, adulting. I hear this phrase all the time with young people that are. So I work in this age group where young people are transitioning out of school into university. They go, "Oh, it's time to be an adult." I was like, "No, it's actually not time to be an adult. You just have to enjoy it." But I think society really pushes this. You've got to be an adult. You've got to be responsible, and you have to be responsible. But it's the context and the framework that's put into it. And I think if we switch the framework and go, actually, yeah, cool, you're growing up and you have a little bit of responsibility, but it doesn't mean you have to lose your childlike behavior, your innocence for certain things. It's okay to make mistakes, and I think there's a pressure, or a perceived pressure, when you start becoming adult, that you can't make mistakes, or you shouldn't make mistakes, and the implications are massive. And it's okay to make mistakes, but also the big difference I think that I find in my coaching world now is asking for help. When you're an adult, asking for help seems to be really, really hard to do. When you're a younger person, asking for help is not as barrier ridden, because okay, I'm going to speak to this person, and you find your person. Whereas an adult, sometimes you have to pay to ask for help, and people are like, "Oh, I don't want to pay." So it's an interesting switch as that happens.
Yeah, and I think even apart from being paying to for help, sometimes people feel afraid that they'd be judged, that they don't know
100%.
it.
Yeah,
So
100%.
they're a little held back because of the way people might perceive them as
Yeah,
they don't know. Oh my God, they're so old and they don't know how to do this.
yeah.
Yes, I
And,
don't.
and,
So what?
and I think you've nailed it right there. The word perception. The perceived fear. You fear and you perceive judge that if I ask someone else, someone's going to judge me. And also the crazy thing is, the people that you're most worried about are the people that actually don't really care too much about your life. They're like, "Oh,
Yes.
whatever, you just do your thing." And the people that actually do care, if you ask for help, they'll be, "All right, cool, thanks for asking for help." And I think that's where the whole adulting world has just got to change a little bit. But again, it doesn't help that social media shows that you have to have your world all sorted. Like when you look at some social media, you go, "Right, cool, by the age of XYZ you have to have da 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 da," and if you don't, then you yourself perceive yourself to be a failure, when actually you're not. And I mean, we can talk about social media like over and over again, but there's both good and bad. But I think that has just implicated the mindsets and changed people's mindsets about sometimes you're just where you need to be in life, and it's okay. In
Exactly.
fact, most of the time you're actually where you need to be.
Yeah, you're always where you need to be.
That's right, exactly, yeah.
Yeah. So
like
thank
like
you.
like like, like me here at 6 o'clock in the morning, which is great.
I was just about to slide that in.
Yeah,
So Prajesh is joining us. It's 6 a.m., right?
yeah, it's 6 a.m. It's 6 a.m. But that's okay. It's all great. It's fantastic.
Are
Yeah,
you already at work?
I am at work. I'm at work. I came to work to do this. So it's a much
You
easier
are so
setting. Yeah.
brilliant. Thank you so much for doing
No,
this for
it's all
us.
good. It's all good.
Yes. And what you said was today the conversation is going to help people build the power of the mind, the power of language, and the power of self talk and reframing. So, which of the
Yeah.
three would you like to kind of?
I think we'll start with the mind. I think the mind is where everything starts.
Yeah.
So when I do my coaching, I work as a mindset and as a breakthrough coach, and I think the two are pretty linked. And the reason why I say that is because everything starts with the mind. We used the word perception before, we used the word judgment before, and those all constructs that come in our mind. They're not real. They're not real. And it's really powerful to actually become aware of your mind and what you're telling your mind. And I'm going to tie in the word language as well, because
Yes.
mindset and language really come together. And as a neuro-linguistic practitioner, this is where you realize your words actually have a huge impact on your mindset. Even though you don't realize it, the way you say things affects the way you think. So when I work with people, when I talk to people, I myself have to become aware of what my language is like, but also the impact of that on my own mindset. So when I work with the clients or with young people, the key thing I look for is the phraseology that they use. What is the words they use? Are they using the words should, could, what if, maybe? Those words indicate, okay, cool, we need to change the way they think about that, because it's a deficit mindset thinking. And I think, what happens is there's a lot of deficit mindset thinking in the world, where we're focusing on the what ifs or the should have, could have, or like I said before, I should be doing this here according to X, Y, Z. And the minute we try and remove that, well, not try. The minute we remove that, the world changes quite a bit. Yeah, you see, there we go, language right there. Language right there, and that's actually right there, clear indication. I try and what I'm trying to push for is don't use the word try. There's no
I
such
know.
thing as try. There's either do or don't. And I think a lot of people say, "Yeah, I try to work hard." Did you actually try? What does that look like? And it's easy to do that. It's easy to catch yourself or not catch yourself and say those words there.
I
So,
actually,
yeah, sorry.
sorry to interrupt you, but I actually came up with a reframe for the word try.
Yeah, what is that? Share. I'd love to know that.
I use the word aim.
Aim. Yeah,
I aim
that's
to do this
yeah,
because in my understanding, and again, because we both are master practitioners NLP, so we do know that try is permission to fail. So
yeah,
when I look at the word aim, what comes to my mind is focus,
yeah,
having a target,
yeah.
and then if you miss the target, you aim again.
Which is very true. And if you don't have a target, you're always going to fail. You're never going to hit it, right? Yeah. So
Exactly.
it's good. Yeah, that's a
Use
really good
aim
reframe.
instead of try.
Yeah, and
I came
that's
up
really
with that.
awesome. I love that's fantastic, because if you think about it, when you're doing a project or when you go anywhere, there always be the aim of the course, the aim of the project. So it's always forward thinking. It's not like we're trying to teach you this or we're trying to do this in a project. Yeah, that's an awesome reframe. You should paint it right now. Paint it right now. Yeah.
Yes, good. Go
So
on.
mindset and language is really important, and reframing is the hardest thing, I think, because of the expectations around the world. And like I said right before, you come with these layers of family layers, cultural layers, and trying to reframe sometimes around that is really, really quite challenging, because you are challenging a cultural and an identity that you have grown up in. And for example, I'm just going to say use an Asian culture. You should be ticking certain boxes along. You go to school, you go to university, cool, you get married, you get a job, and you tick those boxes along the way. And then you try and reframe them to go, actually, this is not the way it is. It doesn't have to be like this. And it doesn't matter which order that goes in. Obviously, education is going to be first, the high school. But after that, it's about achieving what you want to do to get to where you want to go, as opposed to achieving goals for other people. But trying to reframe that with an older generation is quite hard. It's quite difficult, because they are just living the world that they've known, and as we know, it's just generational expectation. So the reframe around that, I think all three time, where your mindset, your language, and your reframing really just coming together. And I really like to use the term that Vishen Lakhianu brought
Yep.
out. I'm sure it's out
Yes.
there. The culturescape, and how the culturescape really defines a lot of people within this closed circle here. And just trying to break through the culturescape is something that is I really try. That's my goal, really, to try and to make people aware of the culturescape. When someone says, I'm doing this, okay, why are you doing that there? Because my mom and dad do that were there. Cool. And have you asked them why they do it? Oh no. And then they asked them, oh, because my mom and dad that way. And why do they do it? Oh, I don't know, they do that way. So, and just trying to break, actually, wait a minute, I can stop this and think about why I'm actually doing this and how I'm doing it.
Exactly. And as you say that, what comes to my mind is my daughter was doing her graduation, and one of the things she wanted to do was to study at least a semester or a year in the mother university, the main campus in Perth. So she was
Yes.
studying with an Australian university here. She said, "I'd like to go to the main campus and at least have one semester there." And so we said, "Fine." Um, I said, we're happy to send you there, but when you make that choice of going and when it's time for you to go, it's you who has to go and speak to your grandparents.
Yeah.
Because I
That's right.
knew
Exactly.
my dad was very, very fixed about, girls should get married at this age. He
Yeah.
had that mindset.
Yes.
So Ida goes in and she goes and speaks to Nanu. Nanu means her grandfather. And he says, yeah, you can go to Australia. Why shouldn't you? Why don't you just get married and then go? Yes. No, no, no. That we cannot be doing. That was for
Yes.
mommy to do, and mommy was okay with that.
Yeah.
But I'd like to carry on with my education, and she spoke to him, and my mom supported her, and she was like, yes, if she wants to go and study, and if that's the only intent she has, then let her go for it. And
Yeah.
and that was beautiful because she was able to convince. I wasn't. I mean, like I chickened out, so I sent her over. But she was beautifully able to convince them and make them understand that this is important for her. And
Yeah.
yeah, so it
Which
just
which which is beautiful. It's really beautiful that that happened. And I guess that another I guess another expectation is with gender, the gender expectation, which you've just mentioned there. But it comes back to right, we say for young mind and free. Your daughter is young, she's got a free mind, and she was able to speak her words with confidence and say, actually, this is what I want to do. And I think we're seeing a lot more of that, which is great. But on the other side, I don't know if we're seeing a lot of listening on the other side. And I will share a story with you as well. One of my relatives, um, she's my cousin, and she wanted to go and do some study overseas. As you do from this life, really. But her family refused. They would just said, nope. What's wrong? You can just stay here. You're a young female. It's pretty dangerous for you to go overseas. And I'm talking about now in the modern world, not a long, long time ago when the world was very different. And they just refused because they just said, no, there's nothing wrong with the world you live in at the moment. You should just stay right here. And she had to get other peers and other people to try and convince her family to let her go. And the only way she was allowed to go was if she promised to come back. And I mean, that's a bit silly because everyone's going to come back at some point. But just to convince the family convince the parents was really, really tough for this young person who had so much potential or has so much potential. But that there was two things. There was a cultural norm and a gender expectation. And that's where, because her brother was allowed to go with no worries. And that's where I get a bit, that's where I'm like, oh, this is not okay.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So how do you then reframe?
Reframe. Oh, it's all about reframe. It all depends on the context, in the context that I'm working in. And I really like, I don't know if you've probably heard this quote by Bruce Lee. It's about being like water. And I always tell people, well, when people are stuck, you could be a brick, and if you're a brick and you're trying to get through anything, you're just going to be stuck all the time because you're just set in your way. This is my frame of mind. I'm just going to be set in my way. I'm just stuck. But Bruce Lee put it in really beautifully. He said, be like water. And he said, if you're like water, you're going to melt to anything. So for example, in my cup here, I've got some water in here, some tea. And it has the shape of the cup. But if I pour the water out into a bottle, it'll take the shape of the bottle. So the water has melted to the bottle. If I take out the water and put it in a bowl, it'll take the shape of the bowl. In each way, the water is still exactly the same, but its context and its framing has changed quite a bit, and it's given it a whole different meaning. And that's the way I use my analogy when I work with young people, and I say, or with anybody actually, that, hey, let's think about, are you in a brick mindset, brick frame of mind, or in a water frame of mind? And then that's when people stop and go, hey, I've never thought of it that way there. And then that gets the reframe. The reframe thought starts going. Obviously, it doesn't happen straight away. But it gets people thinking and become aware. And then and once people start thinking about it, they go, actually, yeah, and then they become self-aware.
And as you say that, I'm going to add to that.
Yeah,
And say that water doesn't have to be soft.
Exactly. Yeah.
Water,
Totally.
if it is persistent, and that's the power of consistency. If water is persistent, what happens is it's capable of creating that little bump inside a brick.
The change, exactly. Yeah. Totally.
Becomes the reason for change. I remember visiting these caves in Georgia, where it was it was under a waterfall, and you had these large pillars of huge water structures. I know there's a name for it. I'm forgetting the name. Calagmites, stalagmites,
That's
something.
stalagmite and stalactites. Yep, stalagmite and
Yes,
stalactite.
yes,
Yep.
yes. Thank you. So it's almost like the water's falling from the roof, and then that it just grows, and they become
Yeah.
these huge pillars.
Yes.
So it's just about persistence, I think, at the end of the day. So
It is,
what?
and the other thing I'm going to add to with water is water can take any form. It's got its liquid form, it's got its solid form when it is and when it's ice, but also it can become a gas. So depending on your frame, when you reframe yourself, you can take any of those forms, and in any of those forms, you can just be steadfast as, no, this is my form that I want to be in as ice, or you can be like, actually, I want to change. I can become a gas and just open my mind, or I want to just grind away and just work on it like water and just grind away, like you said, just slowly but surely, consistently working in place. Whereas you
Yeah,
can't do that with a brick.
you
Well, I
can't do
don't think
that
you
with it.
can. Yeah.
You can't. You definitely
Yeah.
can't do that. So yes, thank you. That is so so powerful. So we're talking about the power of language,
Yeah.
self talk, big
Yeah.
one.
Self talk is probably one of the world's. Oh, I think it's one of the world's biggest barriers. Every one of us has self talk, and I think even a yogi has self talk because they're going into their mindset. And I think it all starts from the moment you get up in the morning. The moment you get up in the morning, what do you say to yourself? Do you say, oh, damn, it's another day? Or do you go, oh, this is awesome. What a fantastic day. It's great to be alive. And I think that's up your frame straight away, and the way your self talk. And the self talk happens, I think if our listeners just have a think about it, I just want you to stop and reflect and go, okay, cool. While I'm listening to this podcast, am I actually listening, or am I listening and telling myself another story in the background there? And we do that all the time. We do them all the time because we're not present, right? When we're not present, we are not fully engaging with what we're doing. Our mind is elsewhere. And self-talk can take on two ways. It can go negatively, as in a deficit in self-talk, or a positive self-talk. But also, you also have to have a bit of a realistic self-talk as well. It's great to be optimistic, but that optimism has got to be done in a framework that is realistic for you in your time frame. So it's if I say to myself every day, cool, I'm going to win $1 million tomorrow, but I don't buy a lotto ticket, I'm not going to win $1 million. So you've also got to action those things there. And I think as what I would love our listeners to do is every day just think about what they say to themselves when they wake up and when they go to bed. So I think those are the two most powerful times of the day, because that's when you're by yourself, literally by yourself. Even if you have a partner, it doesn't matter. You're just by yourself. You're not in a workspace. You are just you and your mind as you're reflecting as you start your day and end your day. And self talk is so powerful. So powerful. And if I think this is where you have to believe in yourself, but also if you can't do that, this is when you have to reach out for help. You have to, and sometimes you're not aware of your self talk or your negative self talk because it is your norm. It is the world that you live in, and you think this is normal. This is the way life is, and this is how people talk to themselves, until someone questions you with a reframe, or questions you about your mindset, or questions your language, and you go, wait a minute. This is quite interesting. So, it goes back to, it's okay to reach out and just say, hey, is this okay for me to be thinking about these things here in this way? And I think I see a lot in the workplace as well. When you ask someone to do something, they see in a different way, and you ask them, why did you say that? Because I myself told me that this is what you meant, when you didn't actually mean that. Yeah, so I think that's how those tie in. And the only way you can get into realize self-talk is by actually putting it out there somewhere, which is why journaling is really important. I think it's a great thing. Journaling is important. Introspection is really important. Because until you write it, it's not real. It's just in your mind. And when you write down, you read, oh, wait a minute, these thoughts are really amazing. Or these thoughts are, whoa, I think that's the best way.
It's almost like putting it into the physical. It's almost like
100%.
putting it out of your mind, putting it on the physical, seeing it for what it actually is. Is it
Yeah,
really the
totally.
truth, or is it something that I'm imagining or assuming? Is it something that I need to address with somebody else and get to the truth of it,
Yeah,
or kind of kill out the assumptions and expectations of
totally.
what's going on in there?
And I guess this, we can relate this back to your story. About starting this whole journey. It was an idea and a thought, and it could have always lived as a thought and an idea. And you had a journey that happened, and you made this a reality, but that your thought became reality because you put it down physically somewhere to make it happen.
Yes. And without giving a lot away, I have something really, really, really special planned out for episode 100.
That's
Uh,
exciting.
it is going to be very exciting, and a lot of people are going to be very, very excited about it when I make the announcement, which I will very, very soon.
Oh, brilliant.
But it
So all your listeners, please make sure episode 100, keep a lookout for that. Hey, don't disappear.
Yes, keep a lookout for that. And the thing is, it was just about asking, because I had this brilliant idea in my mind, but I was doing nothing about it. Fear of being rejected, fear of being told no, maybe, maybe not. And so I just kept it to myself. And then one fine day, I just decided, no, it's just about asking, what's the worst that could happen? I'd be turned down
Yeah,
by the
totally.
speaker. And I said, okay, let me go ahead and ask. And because of the consistency, and because of the fact that we are currently at episode 91, which means we've been doing it for 2 years now,
Which is amazing.
consistently. Yeah, so I was said, yes, why not? I am happy to go for it. So I have a brilliant person
Fantastic.
coming up.
And I think that's an awesome reframe and an awesome mindset thing there. When you say, what is the worst thing that could happen? What is the worst thing? And again, I do a lot of reading, and I'm gonna refer to something I learned from Jay Shetty's readings, where
Yes.
he said you think about a situation and you go, what is the worst thing that could happen? So you challenge your person, what's the worst thing that could happen? And what's the worst that could happen in your life?
You die.
What's the worst? You die, exactly. Death
You
is
wrote
the
that in
worst
life.
thing. Exactly. That's the worst thing. And then if you look at your problem situation that you have and you draw a line, okay, where does that sit in? Oh, it's actually not the worst thing that can happen in life. And you go, oh, wait a minute. And I think that is a great way to just reframe any problem that someone has, or any fear that someone has. You go, wait, the worst thing in the world is you dying and you asking your boss, asking a friend for something. That's okay. You're not dying, so it's okay.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah.
So yes, there's a question here. Kanan asks, how to differentiate between self-talk and
Oh.
whispers?
Oh, that's a very interesting question. Self-talk and satanic whispers. I'm gonna have to admit I don't really know too much about satanic whispers. So what I'm gonna say is satanic whisper something that is actually coming out from somewhere, or is it just yourself telling you that it's a satanic whisper? What is a satanic whisper? Is it just? Do you know what that is?
Actually, just quickly type in for us, what is your definition of satanic
Yeah.
whispers, so that we can help you address this question.
Yes, that's right.
From
Exactly.
your
If you could,
perspective.
if you could tell us, that would be great. Then we can answer that question. But we'll keep talking until we get a. Yeah.
So,
But that's a great question, which has stumped us both. Yeah.
Definitely is. And satanic whispers, to me, I think would be. Let me not go into what it means to me, because we're answering his question, aren't we?
That's right. Exactly. Yeah.
Let's get it from him first.
That's right.
Let's
Yeah.
not get the satanic whispers of our mind kind of.
That's right. Exactly. 100%. Yeah. 100%. Yeah. To anyone else listening out there, feel free to jump in and ask any questions or make any comments. We'd love to have a chat about that. Yeah.
Yes. So, Prajesh, what have been some moments where you really had to use reframe?
Oh, I mean, so when I it was really interesting when I had to reframe my mind from, because my goal, I guess, was to be an academic. I was going towards an academic lifestyle, and this is the way I wanted to go. And when I got into this other role, I was like, I had to really reframe myself and go, wait a minute, I'm now not working as a professor, working in a university in that academic context. Is that okay? What is the world going to think about that? What is my family going to think about that? That was my own internal dialogue. And I had to reframe, like, actually, wait a minute, it's not about them, it's about me. And I've just got to, if I'm helping people and enjoying it, then that's really awesome. The next thing was when I started my coaching business, and I think I'm just assuming here, I think a lot of people before they start a business have a lot of doubts and a lot of negative, just negative self-talk again about, is this going to fail? Am I going to be good enough? And I had to reframe myself again and catch myself and go, actually, if I don't give it a go, I'll never know. I will never know, It's easier to just have an idea and then not do anything about it. The same thing with the podcast. I had this idea for such a long time, and I just didn't know how to get it. I just didn't know how to get it, because it's too hard to do. I had all this. It's too hard to do. No one's going to listen. It's not going to happen. but it was all you needed was a mic, not even a mic, because computers these days come with everything. So once I did that, then I just got that going. So, at those pivotal points, it was quite a huge reframe in my mind. Yeah, and I guess I have to reframe every single day when I work with young people. I get asked questions that just stump me sometimes, like, oh, and it's an automatic response sometimes comes to play because it's just a defensive thing. Well, actually, I've got to stop and think about why am I saying this and why is the young person asking this, or even a client. When you work with clients, they ask you questions that 9 out of 10 clients will ask you questions that are very, very similar in terms of the problem is the same, the manifestation is different. But sometimes you get a question that's just left field, and you got to think and go, actually, wait a minute, I need to think about this and reframe how I perceive that answer.
And looking at what came to my mind was how my mom wanted me to be a doctor.
Yeah.
Doesn't every Indian mom want that? So my mom wanted me to be a doctor.
Yes.
Unfortunately, life had other plans for me.
Yeah.
And then her next inning or her next take on life was, oh, she didn't become a doctor, so maybe one of her kids will. But
Yeah.
my daughter went the communication way, and my son went for games programming. A recent conversation that my son had with his grandma, and she was talking about, I wish either of you had done this, and I asked your mom, and she didn't, and I was hoping either of you would, but neither of you did. So I mean, like, there's no doctor in the family, and he listened to her very calmly, and then very beautifully stepped in to say, but Nani me, mom still is a doctor. And she goes, how's your mom a doctor? She's not a doctor. She says, she's a doctor of a brain. She can fix your
Yeah.
brain for you.
That's right. Exactly. That's so
Oh,
beautiful. So beautiful. What a wonderful, wonderful young person that is. And I think that's really, really beautiful because I have a lot of families that want the young people to be doctors, engineers, or those title vocations.
uh-huh.
And then my question to them is always, even to young people, when they come and say, and I'm like, but why? Tell me why you want to do this. And most of them are stumped. Like they don't know why. Or when they say why, they realize actually that's not a very realistic reason. Like, oh, why? Because it's good money. Oh, okay, cool. Is that why you should become a doctor or an engineer? Oh, it's why because it looks great for my family. I was like, really? So you're not worried about the young person yourself, you're worried about what other people think. And when you start questioning it, and then when you come down, then those that come and go, I want to be XYZ because I want to serve. I want to serve. This is a service professional for me. Then you go, okay, cool. This is the right motivation to do what they want to do. I mean, let's be honest. Some people do it just because they want to make money, or they
Yeah,
want
and there's
status,
nothing wrong
and
with
that
that.
happens.
That's what feels great.
Exactly. And if they say that and the conviction is strong with that, then there's nothing wrong with that, unless they're being honest and open with that, which is great. It becomes different when there's a clash between what a family wants and what a young person wants. That's when it becomes interesting. But if they're on the same pathway, then hey, fantastic.
Go for it.
Yeah,
Um,
go for it.
and I've kept conversations quite open with my kids. And one of the conversations I remember having with my son very early on was, I think, grade 6 or 7. I asked him, what would you like to be? And he very beautifully bounced off just one word at me, saying happy.
Yeah. And
I
how
was
powerful is that? How powerful
like,
is that?
okay, then if you know that's what you want to do, then that's what you want to do. And moving further down, 2 years later, I think I asked him the same question again, and he says he'd like to do games development. And I asked him, you are aware, right? When you are studying that, you're not playing the game, you are
Yeah.
developing games. And he says, yes, I'm very clear on that. I know exactly what I'm getting into. And so that's what he
And he's happy, right? He's happy.
he's
So
happy.
his exactly. So his initial motivation or his initial goal is happening. I think that's a really beautiful learning for anyone that's listening, and also to myself as well. When you strip away everything in life, what do you actually really want? Like, what do you actually really want? You want happiness or love, those emotional things which are powerful. Because you can take away all your titles and everything, and if you have nothing, then what's the point of having all those titles? But also the other thing that I am really a strong advocate for is for education. I think education is really important. And I remember this quote that when I went to a talk where someone said, they can take away everything in your life, but they'll never take away education. And you can always use that to empower yourself and other people. So, and education can be anything. It doesn't have to be formal education. It can just be learning, learning as you're doing, learning as you're going is very powerful. I think, don't let your mind stagnate. Let it always grow in a different way.
Yes, growing is, I think if you're not learning, you're not growing.
Exactly, 100%. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and I think, and I want to also make a reframe difference here between growing and moving.
Yes, please.
Because people say, "I'm always just moving, always moving." Are you moving but actually going anywhere? Because sometimes people are moving but they're not going anywhere. And the greatest analogy I like to use is a rocking chair. A rocking chair is always moving, but it's going nowhere. So you could be moving, but you are going nowhere. So, when you think about moving, are you actually moving forward and growing, or are you just moving in the same spot over and over again?
And as you say that, what comes to my mind is sometimes life gives us something to move towards,
Yes,
and sometimes it gives us something to move away from.
totally. But you're
So,
always moving. You're always moving.
right. So, which do you think is a greater motivator?
I think this is where reframe actually comes into play, because you're not actually moving away off towards. You're moving, and like you said, life will sometimes give you something to move away from, but it's you reframing. Right, cool. Am I actually moving away from that, or am I moving towards something else? So if you go, I'm always moving forward. I'm not moving away. I'm moving towards something different. And I
Right.
think that's, yeah,
I like that. Thank you so much.
no
So
worries.
you actually got the trick in my trick question. Now, what do I throw at you now?
Exactly. Yeah. The trick master is back.
Yes, he is.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's I think as we have this conversation, lots of things come to mind, and I think and I reflect a lot about the people that I've met along my way, and they're always, not always, yeah, no, yeah, they're always aspiring for something. They're aspiring to be happy. They're aspiring for another profession, and then they have a block, and they just want to question, want to ask somebody, right, cool, is this the right thing? They need sometimes people need validation. And and I see this happening quite a lot now. Validation is becoming something that people are seeking, whether it's just someone said it's okay, you can do it, or even just the number of Facebook likes, the number of Instagram posts you get, or whatever. That's a validation. But if we strip everything away, I think the validation is going to come from yourself. If you are happy with what you've decided to do, then that's all that matters. It doesn't actually care what anyone else thinks about it. You've got to just, as long as you're not harming anybody or hurting anybody, this is the one that really matters the most. And I think we forget about that, because it goes right back to the self-talk. If your
Exactly.
self-talk is self-validation in a positive way, then that's a good thing.
That's a good thing. Definitely is. And as we speak about taking a step back, I'm going to take you all the way back to the topic itself, because what
Yeah.
our topic for today is young mind and free. Yes, we
Yeah.
have covered a lot about young mind. Let's also talk about freedom. What does freedom
Yeah.
mean to you?
Yeah, that's a great question. So freedom is a word that is bandied around quite a bit. It's bandied around, be free, be free. What does actually be free actually mean when you are caught up in a whole different world? For me, freedom is when you are doing what you want, the way you want, and thinking the way you want, without worrying too much about social constructs, in a safe and positive way. Not in a destructive way. So freedom, and also I think everyone's freedom is different.
Correct.
There's no set way to be free. For some people, freedom is they want to be financially super rich. For another person, I don't care about the financial freedom. I want to be with my family, and that's all good. For some people, being free is traveling around the world. For some people, it's being close to home. So the word freedom to me is context dependent on you as an individual. What does it mean for you? So for me, my freedom at the moment is being able to engage and talk to people, to grow my mind, which is the premise of my podcast. My podcast is just talking to young people about their journeys, and it's so liberating to listen to young people's journeys. And when I say young people, some of them are qualified and doing things, but they're younger than me. That's what I'm going with. So just learning about journey is amazing. It's an amazing freedom, because it takes me away from my world and puts me in their world, and that is so it's so freeing, because I learned so much about a different person's perspective.
Yeah. Let's just call them young minds.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, young minds, exactly. Young minds. Yeah, young minds. I like that. Yes,
Give
we
them
have young minds, don't we? We have young minds. This is us.
We
Yes.
are young minds, aren't we? So it's
Exactly.
like
Exactly.
even at age 80, we'd be young minds. So
100%.
yeah. So we've got our reply back from Kunan.
Yes,
He
that's it.
says,
Yeah.
"Satanic whispers, random sudden thoughts, bit automatic. I was not usually aware of having them, and I don't have them intentionally." Okay.
That's great. That's fantastic. Okay, cool. So the first thing I would like to say is I think you need to take away the word satanic from that. Because I think that already puts it as a negative thing straight away,
That
or
just
something
gives
that's evil.
permission to push the blame on somebody
Exactly,
else.
exactly, 100%. All thoughts come from somewhere. All thoughts come from somewhere, from some context, and you might not be aware of where those thoughts come from, but they are coming from your surrounding or something you've done, something you've said. So so I don't think there's a big differentiation there. Sometimes we have thoughts that just pop up, and sometimes that just happens. It could be positive, it could be negative, and there's no way of differentiating it. But it's the awareness of what they're trying to tell you is more important as opposed to where it's come from. So when you have this thought here, even if that's not intention, because a lot of our thoughts are not intention, they just happen. Um, I'd love you to just stop and think about what is this thought trying to tell me.
Yeah.
What is the awareness behind this thought here? And you don't have to worry about where it came from because you're wasting your time with that. You just go, right, cool. Is this thought forward focused, or is it a negative focused thought? And why is it going that way there? So is it Conan? The first thing is forget about the word satanic, just get rid of it. I think that's like RK said, it is just going to give you an excuse to blame somebody else. And if it's in your mind, it's coming from you.
It's coming
But
from somewhere.
again, I'm also going to just pre-clarify this is if you do have a health condition and there's something else going on there, then that's a whole different context and conversation altogether. And then you
Right.
probably might see a physician about that there.
Yep. And also and I do know Kunen, so I know where he might be coming with this question is those questions that might be part of our shadow self.
Yeah.
So when we're looking at the shadow self, the kind of things that we repress within ourselves, the kind of things that we have been told are not supposed to be our normal way of behavior, when they show up suddenly, it could be jealousy, it could be anger, it could be
Yeah.
frustration, and feeling that feeling unsatisfied because we've been taught to be grateful always, we've been taught to be
Yeah.
kind always. So when these other thoughts show up in your world, you just wonder what's going on here, because this is not how I think. But you
Exactly.
don't think that way because you've been told,
Conditioned. Yeah.
conditioned to behave in a particular way. So suddenly when you have an outburst and there's so much inside of you, obviously they show up.
Exactly. And that's true. And I think it goes back to what we said right before. When that happens, writing it down. You become really aware of where it comes from, because you're right. We're all meant to be happy and grateful and all that kind of stuff there. Well, yeah, it's cool, but we are human beings, and we have a whole range of emotions, and it is okay to be jealous. It is okay to be afraid. These are all normal behaviors. And I think what happens is a lot of people think I'm feeling jealous, it's a bad thing, or I feel greedy, it's a bad thing. And it's not a bad thing, it's just a thing. And then it's the meaning you attach to that becomes more important. So you have the emotion, you might be jealous, you might be afraid, you might be envious. That's okay. But then you go, right, cool, what meaning do I attach to this? And that's where it comes to play.
And I like what you said about understanding where it's coming from, because it's only when you know where it's coming from can you really uproot it.
That's right.
Otherwise,
Yes.
you leave a little bit of the root within you, and then it grows all over again.
100%. 100%. And you focus on the root but not the seed. And then the seed then becomes a tree, and you're focusing on the tree, and you've forgotten about where that seed actually comes from and what propagated that seed. And again, I'm just going to say this. Sometimes you have to seek help to find the seed, because we get so caught in our own mind, we actually can't see the wood from the trees, as they say, which is why there's a whole range of people out there who are trained to do that. And again, right back to what we said before, it's okay to ask. It is okay to ask.
It's okay to ask. And I'm going to ask you to share with us a little bit more about baskets of knowledge. please.
Yeah. Awesome. So Busters of Knowledge, we're on episode 24. We recorded that yesterday, and it's a purely passion project. It's as I've been working in education, I've realized that everyone has a story. Everyone has a story, but we don't take time to listen to the stories. We don't take time to listen to stories, and we also don't take time to listen to stories from just the normal person, a normal lay person. Sometimes a lot of podcasts out there, a lot of things out there are talking to people that have made it, well, leaders in their field, thought leaders. So I was like, I'm just going to do something different and just talk to young people who are just young people. They are just living their life, living their story. They are just one in a mass of hundreds of other people, and just for them to go, right, cool, this is my story. These are the emotions I've had as I was leaving school. These are the battles that I've had as I was going to university. These are the challenges that I've had, because when we think about holistically, we think about education or going to a tertiary provider, everyone goes, it's amazing, it's all good. And yeah, there's some mental health sometimes, but nobody speaks about it. And when these young people tell me their story and the authentic self, when they go, yeah, it was pretty hard. I actually struggled. I had depression, or I had some food problems come up. It becomes a real story, which I think hopefully will relate to anyone else out there that's listening. That okay, it's not always hunky dory. If you go to any education provider, if you look at their websites, it's all glossy and amazing, and this is beautiful. But you and I both know that's not the case, and I think it's really important to know that it's real. But also, it's not the end of the world. This is you will go through a roller coaster, but there's a light in the tunnel, all right where you are, because it can be done. It's not just, oh, I'm having this, so I'm going to stop. And so with the podcast, I'm just trying to share stories about people that have a whole range, people that are just amazingly confident about life and just going through it, people that have just suffered lots of setbacks but are still going forward and going, hey, this is it. From simple things like being locked down in COVID, to how that actually affects them as a young person, to more impactful things where they lose a parent while they're studying, or where they have no money, they have nothing. The person I spoke to yesterday said to me he went to university and his mum gave him $30. That's it. He only had $30 when he went to university. And how, for both mum and for him, that is just such a massive thing. And how he's now succeeded. He's a graduate. He's working for the government. Those little stories there are just anecdotes that just I want people to hear about.
It's beautiful. I mean, I think the real stories do definitely come from real people, and acknowledging these stories definitely gives a lot of hope to others who think that, oh, it's the end of the world, but actually it isn't.
Yeah,
There's so much
exactly. Yeah,
more that can be done.
that's right. And the other sly message that I'm trying to put out there is for families to hear this as well. Because if we go back to our cultural expectations, sometimes there's a cultural expectation, but when you hear someone else in the same culture but doing something totally different, and it's okay, and I'm just hoping to break that stereotype and that mold that does exist out there for different communities. Different communities have different expectations because of, like we said, generational perception.
Yep. And the story you shared about your cousin and her brother also played up in my home, where my daughter is elder, and her brother was to follow in a few months. She flew out just the last year of university, but we sent him off right at the beginning, so he
Yeah.
went off right there. And it was interesting to observe, and I won't take names obviously because family sometimes does listen in sometimes.
Yeah.
So there were people who said, "Oh, so you're also going?" They asked
Yeah.
her, "Are you also going?" I mean, it
Yeah.
was okay for them to take in the fact that the son is leaving, but when it came to the daughter leaving, they were like, "Oh, you're also going?" So I was like,
Yeah.
But it's okay. It takes different kinds to make the world. We live in a different format altogether. The four of us, we call ourselves the homies, and we just have a different support system for each other. And we love
Exactly.
that.
And at the end of the day, it comes down to what is your family unit, the ones that really love you and care about you, actually think about it, because people are always going to talk. I always
Yeah.
have people are always going to talk, always, and people are going to say things about you. You could be the most amazing person in the whole wide world, but there's going to be someone out there that's going to say you're a bad person, or they're going to find something wrong with you. And if we get caught up in that narrative about what the bad people say we're just going to go downhill. But again, this comes down to awareness. The awareness that humans are innately programmed to look at the hedonistic side, the negative. We see the black dot in the white thing, and as you
Exactly.
become aware of the whiteness as opposed to black dot, and who falls up that white space, your life will change quite dramatically. And I think that's what we're trying to do with the podcast. There is we're just trying to say, hey, there are black spaces in life. There are black dots. That's we're not saying there isn't that, but you can get through it. There's always a white space through it.
Yep.
Yeah.
We have almost touched the hour, but we have a question. Would you be okay
Sure.
to address it? Are you
Yeah, sure.
getting late for work?
Yeah, sure. What do you suggest to enhance self-awareness and consciously create positive thoughts through self-talk? Oh, that is a great question. Okay, cool. So the first thing that I think you should do is when you get up in the morning. I think the morning is very, very powerful. I think I cannot underestimate that. I mean, probably because I wake up really early, but I think whenever you get up in the morning, that is really, really powerful time for you to have self-reflection for yourself. And like we said before, I think journaling is really, really important. People say, oh, journaling doesn't mean anything. And I've never done journaling in my life. And that's okay. So one of the things that I've learned with the journaling is if you set yourself a timer. So when you get up in the morning or whenever you decide to do this, is set yourself a 3-minute timer. And in the 3 minutes, you're just going to have a journal and you're going to write. Even if it's going to be one word or if it's going to be 10,000 words, it is 3 minutes of your time. So every single day for 3 minutes, you're going to do that. You start doing that there. Once you start doing that, the first few times it's going to be hard, and the first few times you're just going to be talking about stuff you write stuff that you see in your everyday life. But as you keep doing it consistently, you're going to start writing your thoughts down. And I think that's when you're going to start seeing, okay, cool. Now I'm seeing what my self-talk is saying to myself. And once you start doing that, seeing it physically in front of you, then you can start going, right, cool. Now, which way are my thoughts going? Are they a deficit way of thinking or a growth way of thinking? So again, I don't like to use the word positive and negative. I think we should do the word deficit and growth because that's a different way of thinking. And you want to try to go towards a growth sort of mindset. But just by writing, I think writing is where you become awareness. And I'm going to say this again. 3-minute timer. That's all you need. A 3-minute timer. And as you become more proficient to that, then you can increase that time length. But for the first 21 days, 3 minutes.
I like that. I love the idea. And before we close, I want to share with you, I saw a movie today.
Yeah, what did you see?
I saw a movie, and I really recommend you to watch it. It's called Come On, Come On.
Oh, yeah.
And it's about relationships. It's about a radio host, show host who goes around talking to youth about simple questions. And it was almost like I was already sitting with you while I was watching the movie. I was like, okay, this is what he does. This is what he does. So one of the questions that really popped at me that he was asking was, what if your parents were your children? What would you want them to know?
What if your parents were so you asking me the question
Yeah.
if my parents were children right now, I would
No,
like them.
if your parents were your children,
If my parents were my children,
if we flipped roles, what would you want them to know?
If my parents were my children, what I would say to them is not to worry about cultural norms, and just believe in yourself and in what you can achieve. And I say that because I grew up in an Indian culture where there's a lot of cultural expectation, but I was very privileged because my parents are pretty open-minded. However, on saying that, there's still cultural impact, and I would say to them, let's not worry about that. Let's focus on you being a human of the world, because I think the world has now changed, and you can go anywhere really and just be a human of the world.
I like that. Thank you so much, Prajesh, for your time.
No worries. Can I just say one thing to any listeners out there? At the moment, I'm only speaking because of my time difference. I'm only talking to young people that are in New Zealand, but I would love to talk to young people from around the world. So if anybody has a young person or a family member or someone that they know would be would love to share their story, feel free to get in touch with me, and we'd love to have them. It doesn't matter where you're in the world, because I think every person has got a story, and young people have some amazing stories. So I'm just
Yes.
pushing that out there. So if you don't mind me pushing that on your channel.
No, please,
Yeah.
please. And come back on comments and write in how they can get in touch with you. The
Fantastic. You will
website
do.
would
Will
be
do.
would be up as well. So do connect with him. I love the work you're doing, Prajesh. It is something that is definitely the need of the hour, and that's why I've invited you on the show. Thank you so much for the work.
Thank you very much for having me. And I've since I connected with you, I've always loved your Smile acronym. And yeah, I'm gonna have a smile-tastic day today, because
Oh
why
yes.
not? Yeah,
Why not? So,
exactly. Why
because you
not?
brought up the SMILE acronym, and for those of you who do not know the SMILE acronym, and if you're new to the channel, do subscribe. And I should have said this much earlier, but anyway, the SMILE acronym is: S stands for silence the mind, M is manage your attention, I is identify the intention, let things go and energize the possibilities. I run mindset training workshops and webinars around this. So, if you're someone who can invite me to do that, please do.
Awesome. Brilliant. Thank you, everybody. Have a
Thank you,
great day or a
everybody.
great
Have a great
evening,
rest
wherever
of the
you are.
day. Thank you for joining us.
No worries.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.